Welcome to my fanfic reading. This is House Elf's Need. I didn't write this. This was written by Chaos Chick Free. Chaos Chick Free. Are you ready? The rain beat against the window panes, tapping on the glass with a continuous, irritating rapping. It was a stormy night. The wind was howling outside, whistling around the eaves of the cabin. Inside, though, the room was warm and snug. A fire crackling merrily, throwing dancing patterns of light on the walls. Hagrid sat firmly ensconced in his big armchair, darning socks. At the moment, though, his hands were still. He looked dubiously at the eager house elf in front of him. "You're too small, Dobby," he explained. "I'd rip you open." "Dobby stretches, sir," the house elf said breathlessly. "Please, sir, Dobby wants you to." Hagrid studied him, musing to himself. "A tiny mite like yourself, and a giant like me. Nah, Dobby. Why do you want to do it so bad?" Dobby gazed up at him avidly, tennis ball eyes watering. "Dobby's an outcast, sir," he squeaked plaintively. "Other house elves do not approve of Dobby. Dobby admires Harry Potter very much, but he needs more, sir." "Harry Potter," he looked guiltily and lowered his voice to a whisper. "Harry Potter is not big enough to fulfill Dobby's needs." He looked horrified at himself and started banging his head on Hagrid's table. "Bad Dobby, bad Dobby." Hagrid let him continue for a moment, too taken aback to react. He stared at Dobby, who was now punishing himself vigorously, before grabbing the elf by the back of his neck and hauling him away from the furniture. "Harry, yeah?" Hagrid asked, thunderstruck. Dobby nodded his head enthusiastically. Yes, sir. Harry Potter did not want to at first, but he felt sorry for Dobby, so he did it as a Christmas present, sir." "And he wasn't big enough for you," Hagrid said, raising one bushy eyebrow. The way he looked at it, Hagrid would have been a diameter of a pencil if Dobby had considered him poorly endowed. Poor kid, he thought. "Dobby likes Harry Potter very, very much, sir, but he is wanting more," Dobby squeaked earnestly. "Ever since Dobby is free, he only had to keep him busy, except for Christmases." "Nothing else, eh, Dobby?" Hagrid asked. Dobby looked embarrassed and tugged at the tea cozy perched on his head. "Dobby is using Professor Dumbledore sometimes," he acknowledged guiltily. Hagrid, who had just taken a gulp of his tea, choked and spat it out. "Dumbledore?" "Yes, sir. Dumbledore has a very big..." Dobby said. Hagrid coughed, a blush rising up past his tangled beard. "Here now, Dobby. When you say his... do you mean his real... the one he does magic with?" Dobby seemed puzzled for a few seconds, and then nodded so hard his bat-like ears flapped against his skull. "Yes, sir. Professor Dumbledore's doing great with his..." he squeaked. "But it is..." "Never mind," Hagrid muttered, trying desperately not to think about the house elf's words. Images of Dumbledore and Dobby kept floating up. More to distract himself than to please Dobby, he stood up and put his cup down. "All right, Dobby. And..." he said, resigning himself to the inevitable. After all, if Harry had done it... Dobby's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Thank you, sir, thank you. Dobby has been so lonely." He hastened to comply, turning... Hagrid groaned. He couldn't remember ever being less... simply wasn't an elf person. He looked at Dobby again, considering, even given that he could... how was he to go about it? Or was it more like... Meanwhile, the prospect of... and suppose he did get hurt? The more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that this was not a good idea. "Dobby," Hagrid said hastily. The house elf was shivering in... "Please, sir, Dobby is not afraid," he squeaked. Helplessly, Hagrid... He didn't want to let Dobby down, but the house elf was just too small. Hagrid opened his hand and looked... His finger! Distasteful as it was better than the alternatives, which would leave Dobby heartbroken. "Alright, Dobby," he said hoarsely. "Keep your eyes shut, okay?" "Yes, sir," Dobby agreed, squeezing his eyes shut tightly. Hagrid took a deep breath. He did stretch. "Yes, sir, yes." Hagrid rolled his eyes. Finally, the house... As soon as he did, he went straight to the rain barrel, where he scratched. The house elf was gone. The cabin looked exactly as it did before Dobby had... Hagrid breathed a sigh of relief and picked up his socks, planning to resume his darning. He sat down in his chair, then leapt back up again. "Winky?" he asked incredulously. From the depths of the armchair, Winky emerged, clutching a butterbeer and hiccuping disconsolately. He peered at him hopefully. "Hagrid, sir. Winky is lonely." The end. Thank you for listening to my fanfic. That was the most cursed thing I've ever read on stream. I'm so sorry. What did you think? But can I get your ratings? You know, out of 10. Hi friends, welcome on in. This was cursed, but it's safe to come back now. No, don't be...